Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, it's day 4 of my 4-day weekend, and we're going to finally get the house all buttoned up. I got all the paint done pretty much, looking pretty good, and now it's put it all back together day. So I actually made the decision to reinstall the intake vents for the HVAC system off camera. I wasn't really sure how it was all going to work out, and I didn't want to waste a whole bunch of time on camera plodding through it. Ultimately, this one went back in using the same screws and screw holes. This one, because of its odd size and shape in there, I actually ended up drilling my own holes on the bottom and the top. You remember I told you I was a little concerned that there was going to be a little bit too much space between that second 2x4 I installed in there and the bottom of the frame? Well, there was, but fortunately I found a couple of pieces of trim work. Some wood in the garage. It was about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I could use that as a spacer, and so that's how I've done that. And so I got these back in. They look horrible, I know, but they're going to be behind things, so I don't think anybody's going to see them, so it doesn't really matter. Now, you may remember about a month ago I did a vlog where I wondered why it was I couldn't get the heater to come on in the house, and ultimately discovered that I just had the setting wrong on the thermostat, but not before I opened up the HVAC system in the garage and just to check and see if there was any problems there. Well, one of my viewers on the comments on that video asked me why it was that when I had access to the furnace and the HVAC system, why I didn't change the air filters at the time. And I didn't really answer it, I didn't really say anything, but here's actually why. Because since the furnace and all that stuff is in the garage, you don't want to have the intake for the system be in the garage, because then you're going to be pumping carbon monoxide fumes into the house. So the air return into the HVAC system is actually here. So this is the point in place where we replace the filters. And it turns out the previous owner left me a couple boxes of filters, so we're good to go on this. So I'm going to put these in right now, and then we'll be good and clean. The ones I pulled out were disgusting, so it was a good time to do it. So with these filters, it's generally just a pretty simple thing. They just slide in. You just get the right size filter, in this case a 12-inch by 30-inch by 1-inch thick. They'll have a little installed on date so you know how long it's been in there. And then all you got to do is really pay attention to this thing. This is the way you want the air to flow. You don't want the air in this one going this way. You want the air going this way. So I'm going to have to actually rotate this around because we're going to be pulling air into here. All right, so I've got the arrow pointing the right way. Basically all you do is just pop this in here and close the door behind it. And I'm going to lock it all closed here so it stays closed. This has been one of my big concerns having this thing open for the last couple days, is that some curious kitty was going to crawl in there and decide to check out what's in there. And you know, there's a blower in there which would pretty well puree a kitty if it had a chance. So every time I've turned this thing on for the past couple days, I've been checking to make sure I know where both the cats are before we go. Now this vent cover was a little weird because this one's actually several inches longer, but they don't have a filter that's the right size. So you know, this isn't exactly the way you're supposed to do this, but this is how they had it done, and maybe we'll look into a better way of doing this at a later date. But we basically got good coverage in here. They just put a piece of wood in there and masking taped it to the filter. So anyway, we got good airflow through here now. So I'm going to close this one up. Set all the little latches here to lock it closed. And that should be good to go. Next thing to do, I think, is I want to clean the floors. All right, so I'm not actually doing anything with the floor because I spilled anything on the floor. You remember I had everything papered up pretty well, and it looks pretty good. But the reason I am doing it is because I've been in this house for about 6 months, and we've been kind of in assembly mode, and so I haven't really been doing a whole lot in terms of keeping the floor clean, except for just occasionally sweeping it. And you know, I've dropped some stuff or spilled a little bit of something on the floor over the last couple months. And since we're now getting to the point where this part of the room at least is complete, I want to make sure it's nice and clean before I put anything on it, because hopefully this will be the last time we'll be doing major construction in this area for a while. And since I know how much you enjoy watching me vacuum, Now, one of the things I also want to do in here is I want to mop just to make sure that any spots or anything that's on the floor comes up. But I always start with the vacuum process first. Get all the loose stuff up first, and then you can come back and mop it, and you won't be having a bunch of gunk on the floor getting sprayed around. All right, floor looks pretty good now. My typical procedure is I vacuum first, then I mop, then I vacuum again. And so I've completed that process because when you want to get all the dirt off the floor before you mop, and then sometimes the mop loosens some stuff up which becomes loose, so that's why I go vacuum afterwards. So I think the first thing I want to do now is let's put this desk back into its position. Somebody asked the other day on one of the comments how it is that I was able to, as one person, to move something this size without scratching the floor. And my answer to them, and I'll tell you too, was that one, the floor is very, very scratch resistant, and two, when I moved it, I put cardboard under the under the corners to protect the floor. And then when I'm moving things, I also use this roll of carpet here also. But that's how I'm doing it, is by keeping a soft surface on the floor so that I don't scuff the floor while I'm moving it. And then I can just slide it a little bit at a time. This thing is still massively heavy, and I had to be kind of careful because I didn't really want to take all the stuff off the top. And so I actually moved it just kind of slowly, little bit by bit, sliding it across the floor, and that's how I'm going to get it back. All right, the desk is back into its corner. Because I have like the air vents and the returns for the air conditioning, I've left a huge gap back here so that air can get in. That'll also, I think, provide kind of a nice little hiding place for the cats if they want. Originally, I had this desk all the way against the wall here, but I left a little gap on this side too, so they can get in or get out from either side. And they like little places to hide, so I can do that for them. So I made a little decision last night about this wall. You may recall that a couple months ago I hung all my pictures and a couple of some beer steins and a clock and a bunch of stuff on the wall here. Well, I miscalculated when I put the shelf on for the clock, and as it turns out, I didn't leave enough room accounting for the low ending part of the crown mount molding here. So I made the decision yesterday that I'm just going to redo this whole wall in terms of hanging pictures on it, and it's got to start with getting those shelves at the right height. And so what I've got is I got an antique clock that used to belong to my grandmother on one of the shelves, actually a shelf that was made by my grandfather. And then I copied that shelf a number of years ago in oak this time. I think he used popple or cherry or something like that. But I used oak, so mine looks a little different, but it's the same shape. And I had the beer steins on that. I think what I want to do is make sure that both of the shelves are at the same height. And so what I got to do is I think I want to keep them both kind of this side of this divider line right here. So I want to get them centered kind of in that area. And I think I'm going to move the shelf that was with these two holes here over one so that they're closer to each other. And then get them the same height so that they look like they match. Then, the tallest thing I think is going to be one of the beer steins, and we'll set the level based on the tallest of the beer steins, and then the clocks and everything else should fit just right. Then we can know, once we got that figured out, then we'll put the pictures up. And I'm going to actually put more pictures up over here too. So I got plans for this wall, and I think that's probably what I'm going to work on next. Yeah, see, as you can tell, the beer steins are taller than the clock. So I think it looks to me, and it's hard to tell, one of these two are the tallest. I think they may actually be the same height, although this one here may be just a tad higher. So I think what I want to do is I want to set the level based on that, and then we'll put both shelves on at that level. So I measured the tallest of these beer steins and found them to be about 10 inches tall. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to go down 11 inches from the bottom of the crown molding here, which means the base of the flat part of the shelf will be at this height here. And then I've marked these points here and here because this is where the stud is. So that's one shelf, and that's going to be the one for the clock. Yeah, that's much better. I got a lot of clearance above, and I think that's a lot better. What would have to happen is it kept bumping onto this part back here, and so I had to have like this thing hanging over the edge like that, because that was the only way I could get it to fit on the shelf. So yeah, I'm glad I did that. That was the right move. Now let's put another one up right here, and that's going to be for the beer steins. Okay, both shelves are up, both are at the same level, and I'm actually really a lot happier with this now. Plenty of clearance on the top, and there's still plenty of room beneath for pictures and stuff like that. Alright, so I spread the pictures out a little bit more, but they're basically up in the same position they were. I think that looks really good. I've got like a little wooden box I put under here that's like a pillow cabinet that I kind of store stuff in when I'm not using it. So that's going to go there. And then I got some more pictures and stuff I'm going to put over here. Alright, these are some of the posters I want to put up. I got a couple of vintage Candyland Riots posters. And I'm going to put these up too. That's me with one of the members of the Blue Man Group. Danny McBride from Eastbound and Down. This is something that Jordan had made for me from Kevin McCarthy from when he did when Kevin did the voiceover for the song in on Orange Sash and the President of the Galaxy. That's another Danny McBride autograph thing. That's the same guy as this guy here. That's Curtis Armstrong and me. Curtis Armstrong played Booger in Revenge of the Nerds. I got a chance to meet him once. Jordan and I went and met Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator. He was doing a one-man show on Edgar Allan Poe. In fact, that's me with Jeffrey Combs right there. I met Vincent Price's daughter, Victoria. And then, of course, that's a photo with me and the singer of Guided by Voices, Bob Pollard. So those are all the ones that are going to go up. I got a couple others that I may or may not use, but they're lower priority right now. All just depends on whether I have room for them. All right, so I basically got this wall all back together now, and got the new stuff added here. Got my little Candyland Riots collection of posters here. I don't know, some of the fun people I've met in my life, and a few kind of fun souvenirs. You may remember that Jordan got that at a thrift store one time, and he gave that to me. So that's going to hang right there. And I think this wall is just about done. Now I got a little bit of a blank space over here, and we'll figure out something to put up there at some point. Probably a couple of somethings, but other than that, I think this wall's going. So let's move over to this wall. This wall's here where the good stuff's going. The Guided by Voices collection, which goes down the hall, is going to kind of bleed out into this little section right here. And I think some of my best things are going to go there. Alright, so it's the end of the day on Wednesday, my last day off, and I pretty much got this room back together now. This is pretty much how I want it to be. I got all the pictures I wanted over here. I kind of shown you that. I kind of cut the telescope down to size a little bit. I can kind of retract the legs a little bit, which made that kind of the perfect place to store that. Got a couple of interesting just collectible items here, some Guided by Voices memorabilia. But this is the part I really wanted to show you, because this is, I think, best part of my collection. As I said, the collection was going to bleed out here into the living room a little bit. I had a couple of posters that I hadn't put up yet. See, when I did the haul here, I kind of knew that I had more posters than I had wall space, because not only did I have it in the entire upstairs common area in the house in California, I had a whole bedroom that was filled with it too. So I knew everything I had wasn't going to fit on these walls here. So I knew I had to have it bleed out a little bit. So I kind of picked my favorite stuff to put up here. But these are a couple of the posters that I liked that I really wanted to put up that I didn't really have room for. And so they didn't get put up. But these are kind of some of my favorite items in the collection. This one, I was just sort of kind of getting into the point where I was in a massive collection of Guided by Voices stuff, and apparently Guided by Voices appeared on a local radio station, WOXY Radio in Dayton, Ohio, and to commemorate the event, the radio station purchased this guitar and had all the members of the band sign it. Well, it turns out that the person who won the guitar wasn't really a Guided by Voices fan, so he sold it on eBay and I picked it up, and it's been a part of my collection ever since. This guitar here is kind of special too. This one I actually purchased from the lead guitarist Doug Gillard, and I've had this for a long time. He actually autographed it to me when I got the thing. You know, I bought this in about 2005. Along with this amp, and I'll tell you a little bit about that amp too. There's a kind of a fun story involving that. But I had, my friend Matt and I, Matt from the guy who runs the Island Horizon videos that I've talked to about a number of times about his site. Well, he was the one that got me into Guided by Voices, and he was a huge fan, and he started building a website that later turned into guidedbyrobertpollard.com, which we still run to this day. Well, about 10 years ago, I was starting to have some money problems. I was working at Disney. I wasn't making any real money. And I was having to kind of give up some things that I just couldn't afford. And one of the things that I had chose to give up at the time was I stopped running the Guided by Robert Pollard site. Now, I'd put a lot of work into that, and there was a lot of great content on the site. So I didn't want to lose it and just delete it and have it disappear. So I contacted another fan of the band, and they agreed to take over the website for a number of years. And for about an 8-year period, they owned and controlled the website. They never actually added anything to it. They just kind of kept it as is. Well, a few years ago, Matt and I decided we wanted to get back into Guided by Voices again. And since the band had changed a little bit, it was basically a new band with a couple of old members, but some new members, and it was basically just a brand new band that was still called Guided by Voices and was still banging out great rock songs. Well, we decided when we took over the site that we were going to do it a major overhaul because it was a different band. We were going to give it a whole different look and a whole new different focus. And there had been a whole bunch of collectibles I'd gotten over the years that I'd never put on the website. See, I had a big section in there to kind of show all of this, but there were a bunch of things I got after I was, stopped being in charge of it, or even right before, where I just never updated it. And one of the things was this promotional photo that I had for many years. It's autographed by the singer. It's got a great picture of the artist. Well, a couple years ago, when I was scanning this photo in, I started looking very, very closely at this guitar. And let's see if I can get the stupid thing to focus here for me. You know how that's an issue here. Well, anyway, when I looked at it on the computer screen, it became clear to me it was this guitar. And so that was very, very exciting when I discovered that. And so that's become a kind of a very favorite part of my collection here, something that I have made it a point to, store and display together, just so you can see, hey, these are the same, this is the same guitar. How cool is that? The singer of your favorite band has an official promotional photograph holding a guitar that you now own. So that's been a very, very special part of my collection for a long time. In addition to the fact it belonged to Doug Gillard and was used for playing a bunch of Doug's stuff on some albums and live shows and all that. And so that was a very special thing. And to be able to attach those two items together was a lot of fun. Now, I got this thing about the same time. This was also Doug's amp head. This basically, it's the amplifier minus the speaker. And he sold this and he sold this and a bunch of other things all at the same time. And I managed to get both of the items. Now, this thing had a very special meaning for me because there was kind of a fun memory associated with it. In the early days, when we were going to see Guided by Voices, it was myself and Matt's wife, Susan. And Matt and Susan were both really obsessed with the band, and I was still trying to get into them. Well, this was probably, I don't know, 4th or 5th or 6th show that I'd gone to see. It was in a little club in San Diego called Brick by Brick. And Susan had gotten to the point where she was obsessed enough with the band that she started seeing that people would go backstage and hang out with the band. Well, she snuck her way back into stage one night for one of the shows at this gig, and basically Matt and I followed her in about a minute later, and it turns out we ended up watching most of the show from the backstage. Now, this was a little teeny tiny club. It had a little postage stamp of a stage, and then there were a couple of steps going down on the right side of the stage, stage right, that went into the what they call the green room for the artist to kind of hang out backstage. There was a backstage area. There was a bathroom there, and it was a little teeny tiny room, and really not a whole lot of room at all. It was maybe an average sized bedroom cut in half. So just a really teeny tiny little place. But we ended up watching that show from backstage, and I remember with this item that there was one point where Susan was sitting on these steps that I told you, and she decided that between one of the songs, she was going to run out on stage and give the singer a hug. And the way the band was lined up, it was the lead singer in the middle, the rhythm guitar player, and the bass player on the left, and the lead guitar player, Doug Gillard, on the right. So Doug was between Susan and the backstage door, and Bob, who was in center stage. Well, Doug had a very elaborate pedal setup for his guitar, so you get all sorts of effects. And then there were a series of cables that ran from the pedals back behind Doug to this amp head, and then that was, you know, how everything got amplified and turned into rock. Well, in the process of running out there on stage, Susan got tangled up in the wire that went from his pedals to this guitar amp. And if she hadn't caught herself as quickly as she had, it was very likely that she was going to pull the stack over, that they would just pull over the whole thing and stop the show. I remember seeing this, and it was one of those things, you know, when you see something horrible happen and everything kind of goes into slow motion. Yeah, it was like that. And we were, you know, I just watched this thing. It's like, oh, great, that's the end of our relationship with this band, because they're never going to want anything to do with us again because Susan ran out on stage and pulled over Doug's guitar stack. Well, it never happened. She caught herself in time to do it, and it wasn't a big problem. But that guitar amp now is mine. So there's kind of a fun story with that, too. So wanted to share that with you. Like I said, I've been looking forward to being able to put this stuff up on the wall for a long time. I had this in a prominent location in the house in California, and now this is where it's going to live here. You may notice I got a little bit of a blank spot on the wall here, and I'm kind of thinking, I've got this notebook here of a bunch of Guided by Voices memorabilia I've collected over the years, and I'm thinking I might make just a little table or something that would go into that little spot that would hold this thing, so you could open this thing up and take a look at this. But that's maybe a project for the future. But this room, I think right now is good to go. So yeah, I think it turned out good. I'm very happy with the color we chose. I'm very happy with how the paint job turned out, and I'm happy with how everything's on the wall. So we are definitely making progress. This room looks 1,000% better. So I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.